Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. I hope that your week is absolutely amazing, and we're very glad that you're here and with us. We have an incredible stream planned ahead. Quick preview on what's coming up. Some Jack Smith stuff, some Stacy Plaskett subpoenas, and more. Quick preview, then we'll zoom in for further detail. But a big one dropped today. Jim Jordan prosecuting Thomas Windham, or rather, to be clear, referring this over to Pam for prosecution, but saying Congress, the Judiciary Committee, thinks that this is appropriate. And so we'll go through it. Thomas Windham, the first person on Jack Smith's team who is now subject to a criminal referral, and hopefully it's the first of many to come. So we'll go through it. It's a nice filing that was sent over to Pam Bondi. Hopefully she is receiving it with open arms, but we'll see what is inside. Thomas Windham is this fellow right here who was working with Jack Smith as a senior advisor, senior prosecutor for all of the rigged prosecutions that were brought against Trump and that were handed off to many others because they were colluding with the J6 committee and others. So we've got that we'll talk about. Then we've got some Stacey Plaskett business to get into, because her records are now being subpoenaed. James Comer over with the House Oversight Committee is saying that Epstein texter Plaskett has now been the subject of records that are being subpoenaed. So you can see we've got 3 letters that have gone out here. One going to the Honorable Gordon Rhea, who is over at the Virgin Islands DOJ office. And so, in other words, Congress is saying to the DOJ down in the Virgin Islands, which is where Stacey Plaskett originates, that's her district, they say we want a bunch of records because we know now she was texting with Epstein and getting a bunch of money from Epstein. So they sent a bunch of demands over to the DOJ, over to Deutsche Bank, and to JP Morgan. And we'll take a look at some of those letters that have gone out. We'll get some of those subpoenas, and we'll follow Stacey Plaskett's little texting rabbit hole. So then we got Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche were out today. There was a presser and they took some questions. The presser was about some drug dealer, somebody, who cares, but they got questions about Epstein. And so we'll listen to what they have to say about all of that coming up. Then Cuomo had an interesting conversation with this woman. And we're always asking this question, where are the victims? What are they saying? Have they already given information over to the DOJ? Have they already made police reports, in other words, for each individual person that are all just being sat on? And we'll listen to what she has to say about that, because the answer might be yes, is what she says. So we've got that. Then Comer is coming out. And in a follow-up on the subpoena battle, remember yesterday we talked about the Clintons and how they're not responding to their congressional subpoenas and what the future might hold for them, given the precedent that Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro went to prison for not complying with a congressional subpoena. So maybe that is what should happen to Bill and Hillary. Comer will explain that to us here in a moment. Then we'll talk about this censure battle and how the Democrats are freaking out about this. This is really enjoyable because Rascin was on the floor. He's like, what? Epstein? So what if she was texting him? He was a constituent. Huh? So who cares? It's like, all right. So they were going to be their new line. They're like begging for these files to get released. The files get released and they're like, oh, dang it. No, not our guys. Yeah, it's Stacy. She's in big trouble. So they're all hitting the panic button. I've got Stacey Plaskett who's screaming about this. We call this pounding the table when they're out here. So she was on with CNN, and the media, to their credit, they've been asking her about this. They're like, you want to explain this? Like, why was he telling you to stop chewing? And then you're like, yes, Jeffrey. Sorry about that, sir. Like, he is your owner. Like, you're his puppet. Pretty sick. So we got Hakeem is also responding to this because apparently the Brooklyn Obama was also saying, we'd like to have dinner with you, Epstein. Just let us know when that's going to be convenient. So lots of reaction on that. They tried to censure Stacey Plaskett, but I think the reason why that didn't go through, they're saying it was because they had to protect Corey Mills. We'll break that down. But they also, I think, probably don't want anyone else and their texts with Epstein to come back out. Okay. If he's texting one congressperson, probably texting many others. And so Tim Burchett is, dadgummit, he's unhappy with what happened last night. And so we'll go through that and see what he has to say. But it's going to be a beautiful stream, my friends. Thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel and liking this video. And thanks for becoming a member. If you enjoy our content, grab some extra content. We do members-only streams all the time, and we'd love to have you join us. We have a great members-only community, and we had a great stream this morning where we were talking about Texas, man. And we're getting shafted out in Texas. We're running against a hard deadline on that. The new maps have been eliminated by some federal judge, apparently a Trump appointee, who said, these are racist maps. How dare you? California can add 5 seats to them, but when when Texas tries to add 3 or 4 or 5, whatever the numbers were, that's a racist. You can't do that. That's bad for the minorities of America. So not good. Precarious position. They said that they're going to take that up to the Supreme Court, but by the time we get up there and back down, many of the deadlines may have been passed. So we're going to keep our eye on that. We're going to see how quick they can expedite things. But we talked about that this morning. Shout out to our membos. Thank you for supporting our work. Thanks for becoming membos and all the things. We love you. All right, now let's get into business. A criminal referral for one of Jack Smith's top henchmen finally coming down. The first Jack Smith criminal referral to Pam Bondi that we've seen here. And it's a good one. Jim Jordan sent this out from the Judiciary Committee over in the House of Representatives. And it's a big one because we know Thomas Windham came down and had a deposition. And in this memo over to Pam Bondi, we got 193 pages. We'll, of course, hit the cover letter from Jim Jordan explaining why this guy should be prosecuted. And this is Thomas Windham, to put a face to a name, walking out of court, carrying his law books like he's really sophisticated. You just use the internet now, but okay. So he says that now this guy is worthy of criminal prosecution. And as we know, this little domino effect that happens, the first domino knocks into the other, the cases spider web out, and we follow it where it may lead. But the Jack Smith team has been long part of our scrutiny here, and so we're happy to see some developments in this arena. But Jim Jordan posted this, says, now we're referring Jack Smith's former deputy, Thomas Windham, to the DOJ to be prosecuted. Over to you, Pam. Says, read the full referral over here. We'll do that happily. Posting this on the 19th of November, saying today, Jim Jordan referred Thomas Windham, former senior assistant to Jack Smith, the illegitimate prosecutor, to the DOJ for criminal prosecution. Why? Because Windham declined to answer nearly every single one of our questions, and then made up various reasons for that. Now, as senior assistant to Jack Smith, Windham has unique firsthand information about the work that office did. Yet, despite being given express authorization by the DOJ, right? Pam Bondi comes in and says, oh, no, we don't need to exercise any privilege. Feel free, run your mouth, man, talk about everything. He still declined to answer questions. Now, these topics, when we brought him in, included a bunch of things. Knowledge of a February 2021 proposal that another prosecutor called J.P. Cooney brought to the FBI to investigate Trump. Okay, they were all coming after him, and then they just handed their homework over to Jack Smith, and then they called it independent. Also, interactions and materials that they got from the J6 committee that we saw in the J6 own writings and the committee's own letters. They said, we're going to continue to provide information to your office there, Jack, on a rolling basis. Information related to the surveillance of Scott Perry and the seizure of his cell phone. Information about how many members of Congress were investigated as part of Arctic Frost and Jack Smith's investigation. And communications about evidence in possession of the Willard Hotel. Now, Thomas Windham, Jack Smith's henchman, refused to answer nearly all of the questions, and now he needs to be prosecuted and indicted immediately. So hopefully Pam Bondi got the memo. So we're going to go through this. Then we got reaction from Jim Jordan when we're done, and reaction from Senator Eric Schmidt, who has comments about Jack Smith and what should happen to him. But here's the letter. To Pam Bondi, the Honorable Pam Bondi, from Jim Jordan and the Committee on the Judiciary out of Congress. They say, all right, Attorney General Pam. The Committee on the Judiciary writes to you to refer significant evidence that Jack Smith's prosecutor, Thomas Windham, former senior assistant to Jack, has, by his conduct during a deposition in front of Congress, obstructed a congressional investigation, just like James Comey did. Now, he was a witness, and a witness violates the law when they corruptly obstruct or impede the endeavors of Congress. And that is a problem. Congress cannot perform its oversight function if witnesses like Thomas come here and then they corruptly refuse to provide any information that the law requires them to provide. The obstruction of a committee investigation undermines Congress's core constitutional oversight obligations. And now we're giving this to you, Pam, so you can investigate all of this evidence that we're about to dump out on you. And there's a lot, even from the deposition. They're going to summarize it all for us so we can see what Pam has handed to her on a silver platter that hopefully she can take and run with. Now, the Supreme Court, they say, has recognized that Congress has a lot of power, and the rules authorize us to conduct oversight, including sending subpoenas to witnesses. Now, pursuant to these authorities, we're asking questions about Jack Smith and the rigged investigation, rightfully so. Now, as a part of our authorized inquiry, the committee sent a letter to Thomas Windham back in April. We said, hey, Thomas, can you come out here for a voluntary interview? We've got questions about your role as a prosecutor on Jack Smith's team. And since you're a civil servant and a career prosecutor, surely you'll do your duty to your country, right? And come answer some questions about your flawless execution of your law enforcement duties. The letter provided a non-exhaustive list of examples of alleged misconduct by Jack Smith's corrupt team. And the committee's request did not limit the scope of the information or seek any conditions on the testimony before we got approval from the DOJ. Okay, so he's former DOJ. They say, DOJ, do you have any problems? Are you going to object to us asking any of these questions, this question or this question? They say no. But nonetheless, the DOJ did authorize his testimony. They said, no, go talk to them, no problem. In an email dated May 29, 2 weeks prior to his initial voluntary interview, the DOJ provided Windham and his attorney with the anticipated scope of our questions. 4 topics, 20 subtopics. Can you come in and talk about it? Then on June 4th, the DOJ consolidated and organized these items into 5 topics and granted Windham authorization from the DOJ. Yeah, you can talk about all those things. DOJ is not going to invoke any privilege. Go wild. Then they gave him another accommodation to ensure that he would speak on 3 different occasions. We gave his attorneys topics that he could prepare for. But rather than raise concerns about any of this or seek clarification about the nature of what we were going to ask him, he came into Congress and he declined to answer multiple questions during this interview on the inaccurate basis that the DOJ had not authorized testimony about those topics. Oh, I can't talk about that. DOJ says I can't. They say, no, they literally say you can. For example, Windham, Jack Smith's prosecutor, invoked an absurd and indefensible interpretation of the DOJ's authorization by refusing to testify about communications. He says, well, FBI officials are not DOJ officials, so the FBI is different than the DOJ. The DOJ can only give me permission for DOJ officials. He said, well, the FBI works and is organized under the DOJ. He said, well, it's still FBI, so I can't answer any questions about that. Here's how that went down. All right, Thomas, did you ever have any discussions with Mr. D'Antuono about seeking information from the Willard Hotel? And D'Antuono was, I think, the special agent in charge of the DC office. The same guy who's like, I don't know what happened to the cell phone data of the January 6th bomber. Now, I think, he says, Windham, well, I think that falls into 2 different prohibitions. I mean, what I said before is that I know who Mr. D'Antuono is. And when you asked me that, whether I interacted with him or whatever the specific question was before me, I pointed you to the department. They have not authorized me to. He says, yeah, but Mr. D'Antuono is a department official, so you're authorized to talk about him. So he says, well, so for that reason, I won't be able to talk about any specific interactions with Mr. D'Antuono. And this is a prosecutor, of course, working for Jack Smith, who's interfacing with the FBI. Well, I can't talk about that. Beyond that, the question that you most immediately pose seems to me, this guy, to the extent that it occurred or did not occur, my understanding would fall, as my counsel indicated, within Rule 6 obligations, which would further prevent me from discussing that with you. It's like, oh gosh, he's one of these dudes. Ugh. No wonder he was on Jack's team. He's like, perfect. He's like, this guy can just run his mouth and just say nothing. In addition, attorney chimes in. Your request to the department specifically named those 2 agents, and this guidance letter to us does not. It says on the letter, we said we wanted to ask you questions about department officials. It says that on there, correct? Well, FBI agents are not Department of Justice officials, as I understand the term. They say, what? Are you stupid? That's ridiculous. FBI is a part of the Department of Justice. Attorney chimes in, well, I understand that, but I don't know that it is a Department of Justice official. Huh. But anyway, regardless of whether this is an official or not, any interaction with him, I'm aware there's a newspaper article that prompts this line of inquiry, which is supposedly about a subpoena to the hotel, as you said. Any subpoena issue would be by definition a grand jury subpoena, and therefore that topic is off limits because of the grand jury rules, as indicated on page 2, and so his lawyers like coming in with like lawyer technobabble, because he doesn't want to answer questions. Now, this position, they say, is clearly nonsensical because the FBI is a component of the DOJ, and the DOJ specifically told his attorney that the committee would ask questions about this. Then Windham came in, and they refused to provide certain details. No names, no information about the other prosecutors that he worked with during the investigations into Trump. Nothing. Citing lack of department authorization. These positions are in literal direct conflict with the department's clear direction to provide information about these topics. So then Windham, he came in and he says he also relied on what the committee considers to be an overly broad interpretation of the rules. Now, while the department's letter did note limited exceptions, we're not going to talk about the grand jury stuff, okay? The question posed by the committee were only tangentially related to that. And he still refused to answer questions about what may have happened with the partisan J6 committee, as well as his interactions with the FBI to get the billing records from the Willard Hotel. Now, his conduct during this interview contrasts starkly with the way other department employees have handled this rule before. In fact, this Congress, the committee has conducted transcribed interviews with a bunch of other people, including J.P. Cooney. For example, former special counsel senior prosecutor J.P. Cooney, also on Jack's team, he came in and he talked about it. He said he had communication with staff on the select committee about obtaining information. Yeah, admitting Jack's team colluded with Liz Cheney. Likewise, department tax attorneys called Jack Morgan came in, Mark Daly came in. They talked about all their interactions with the FBI, including investigatory steps and evidence collection. Viewed in context of this, Windham is the odd one out. And then he turned around and started making privilege assertions. Now, after he refused to testify about the topics that we told him to come in and talk about, the committee issued a subpoena. We said, all right, if you're going to come in and play that stupid game, come in voluntarily. We work with you. You're wasting our time. Here's the list of questions. Any objections? No, we'll be there. Then you get there. Then they just stonewall you. They said, all right, that's enough of that. Now you're getting a subpoena, Tom. They sent him one back on July 21st. Says, you better get your butt back here. You better reappear and retestify about these topics. In advance of the depo, being very nice to him. On September 4th, they wrote to him again. The DOJ said, hey, Thomas, you can give unrestricted testimony about everything. Okay, a little errant red line there. Says unrestricted testimony. Specifically, the department, the DOJ, gave him a list of topics that said, you can talk about all these. So if you come in and say you can't, it's written in stone. See it. DOJ explained that given the extraordinary events underlying this, unrestricted testimony includes everybody and all agents in the department. Now, despite this authorization, this dude came in again. On September 30th, he declined to answer, again, nearly every single question, citing various shifting justifications. Specifically, his lawyer began the deposition by asserting numerous blanket objections to our ability to depose Windham. He says, well, he has First Amendment privilege. He's got attorney-client privilege. We've got a belief that the committee has no legitimate legislative purpose for this at all. And Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. It's like, why? Why are they so opposed to just answering questions? I mean, if their investigations are so flawless and they did everything by the book, why can't they just say, no, this is what we did? Since they're public servants, because they know that they're totally busted. Pursuant to a House deposition rule, they gave him a copy. They said, well, okay, you can raise your objection, but then you have to make them non-argumentative and non-suggestive. Okay, like lay down your objections and then move on. Now, in response to at least 70 questions, this civil servant and career prosecutor, he replied with some version of the following response. He says 70 times in this depo. I respectfully decline to respond for the reasons stated by my counsel, over and over like a broken record. When the committee sought clarification about which one of the reasons justified his refusal to answer questions. He just kept saying Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. I respectfully decline to respond for all reasons stated by my counsel. Then the committee said, well, what's your reason for this question? He declined. He offered vague, repetitive, evasive responses, declined to respond for all the reasons. He even declined to answer questions that were already previously answered during his voluntary interview. And so now his refusal to answer nearly all the questions, it obstructed our fact-finding. As a senior assistant to Jack Smith, he has unique knowledge of this, but despite being given express authorization twice, he declined to answer any questions, including these: knowledge of a 2021 proposal that Cooney brought to the FBI, interactions with materials that he got from the J6 illegal committee, what he was doing with Scott Perry's cell phone, information about Arctic frost, FBI evidence in their possession from the Willard Hotel subpoena. This obstruction is very apparent, they say. Other witnesses came in and testified. J.P. Cooney came in and he testified. He said, well, Jack Smith's team never considered how seizing Scott Perry's cell phone would interrupt his duties as a member of Congress, while Windham refused to respond to any questions about that. In addition, Cooney also testified, another Jack Smith prosecutor, that he had had communications with staff on the committee about obtaining information in the report. Now, Windham didn't do that at all. He objected to every single question that was posed to him. Now, he also, Cooney, the good prosecutor, the better one, he also testified that he did review some CHS information, but Windham wouldn't answer any questions, period. Now, he thus chose a different course. Now, although the DOJ had specifically authorized him to testify, he flouted our right to ask him questions. Windham's insistence on refusing this deprives our committee of work and doesn't give us info about Jack Smith. And we'll see if there's more to this. Otherwise, this is pretty light. But Windham corruptly obstructed this and our committee by withholding information from us. They say he acted corruptly. Let's see how they define this. Now, to be clear, this referral, this is what we're looking for. A little bit more meat on these bones here. This referral does not result from a good faith disagreement about the scope of the rules. He just simply refused to answer any questions at all. And this conduct went far beyond. This is intent to obstruct us. Now, despite previously providing the committee with certain limited information, he then refused to confirm any of that information during his depo. And to the extent that his transcribed interview, and when he did invoke his fifth, there are strong grounds to conclude that any Fifth Amendment privilege was raised with respect to those questions, since he already talked about it. So when he came back the second time, he improperly refused to talk about these things that he must talk about. He testified during the first conversation about the inception of the Jack Smith investigation. Question to him, or his answer rather. He said, the first detail was to the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. Okay, and when did that detail begin? Well, he says, I don't know, kind of middle of November 2021 maybe. And were you asked the detail, or did you seek out the opportunity? I was asked to go on a detail to go get Trump. Okay, fast forward in the transcript. Was the focus of the investigation on the events that occurred on J6, or was it really more about the 2020 election? When this detail was formed, what were you working on? He says, well, there wasn't investigative information that had been developed during the course of the investigations into either on the ground rioters who breached the Capitol, and then also what later became the conspiracy cases as a shorthand, which may involve people like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, both trials we covered here, where they may have not actually, in some instances, entered the Capitol. Yeah, no, Stuart Rhodes wasn't even inside the building at all. And same thing with Enrique Tarrio, never there, not even in D.C., Enrique. So those are the sorts of investigations where I began looking at the files. That was during round one. However, round two, he comes back. When asked about these topics during his second deposition, he then refused to provide any information about his November detail. They said, hey, Thomas, you testified in June about what you did at the DOJ. You stated that the first detail was in the District of Columbia. When did that begin again? I respectfully declined to respond. Okay, you already answered this in June. You answered that question in June. You said, here, like November 21. Would you like to confirm that? I respectfully declined to respond. All right. You testified about this. I respectfully declined to respond. and over and over and over. Further, during his June interview, he also testified about his detail of Jack Smith's office. He said, well, the next detail was to Jack's office. And when did that begin? He says, well, he was appointed, I believe, November 18th, and I began the detail to that office shortly after Jack Smith came on board. But during his deposition, again, at the second round, he says, I'm not answering that question. You were a member of the special counsel's team, correct? I declined to respond. Now, in addition, despite previously testifying about all these things, he invokes his Fifth Amendment. When asked about his interactions with 9 people during the depo, he refused to answer whether he attended meetings with Garland and Jack Smith, although he talked about it before. In June, here's what he said. And prior to Mr. Smith's appointment, it appears that Garland had summoned prosecutors to Main Justice to flag for them the impending appointment of Mr. Smith. Did you go to the meeting on November 18th with Garland? Okay. Was I involved in that meeting? Yes, says Windham. And who else was in the meeting besides you and the AG? Well, there were a number of people. Maybe I can describe it. I was advised that day that I was invited to a meeting, and Garland comes in. He's at the head of the table. I can't recall if he sat down or if he's standing up. It's a brief meeting. He says something to the effect of, without recalling the exact words, it's like 3 years ago, you know. He says, thank you for all coming on short notice. I wanted you all to know that I've decided to appoint a special counsel. That special counsel is Jack Smith. I don't remember the exact words, but he said it shortly thereafter. Then he went and announced it publicly. I recall him saying something like, you know, I hope that y'all will continue working with Smith, or that y'all will consider working with the special counsel. You know, something along those lines. All right. And when was the first time you met Smith? Sometime first week of December. And how often did you interact with him when you were on the special counsel's team? He says daily. But then he comes back. Question. Did you have any in-person meetings with Garland? Declined to answer. Any in-person meetings with Jack Smith? Declined to answer. During the September 30th deposition, we sought to understand why he refused to answer these if he already answered them. But he didn't explain. He said, well, privilege, and didn't assert any specific objections. Windham's refusal to confirm his prior testimony, despite the committee giving him numerous opportunities, can only be understood as a blatant attempt to corruptly impede our inquiry. You think a jury's going to indict him on that? Says, at the outset of the deposition, Windham's counsel provided a list of various objections. Then in responding to particular questions, he repeatedly stated, I'm not answering any questions. By refusing to state his objections, he failed to comply with our rules. Now, despite repeated requests, he did this 70 times. Just blanket refusal to answer. His repeated reliance on these broad brush blanket justifications without any connection is highly suspect and unpersuasive. First, we explained in detail why we want these things, and he doesn't care. He says we got a valid legislative purpose. For example, when asked by the committee to explain whether he was relying on the Fifth or the First, he testified. They said, all right, Thomas. So you're not willing to answer any questions about how you prepared for today? I decline. So your counsel illuminated a number of reasons why you might not respond. First Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Is it Fifth Amendment for this question? Decline. Attorney says, and I will add that I think your question invades privilege and work product with the client. I'm not disputing your communications with your counsel. I'm just asking, are you invoking it because of that privilege? Now, the lawyer also asserted that, you know, merely listing a whole blanket thing, a list of justifications is enough. It applies to all of them, but they wouldn't confirm anything. Mr. Windham won't even answer this. What positions did you hold at the Department of Justice during your tenure there? Won't even answer this question. I decline. Is part of your reason that you're asserting your Fifth Amendment right now? I decline. Okay, well, that's fine. Is it a Fifth Amendment reason or what? I decline. Okay, well, you're objecting to our question on a potpourri of reasons. Now, you may not like this. You may not appreciate that we're here, but we're Congress. We can ask you these questions. We need to know why. Do you understand that you have to give us a reason? Attorney says, I do. Okay, and you haven't given us a reason yet. Attorney says, well, I don't understand your point. He doesn't have to say anything. I've advised him invoke his rights, and he doesn't have to respond to you. back and forth between him and his attorney. So they move forward. They say, well, you want to answer this question? I decline. And it's his privilege. He's not answering anything. So they say, this is extraordinary. Congress, witnesses may assert their Fifth Amendment rights. Of course, they say. But here, he's refusing to even invoke his Fifth Amendment rights. Moreover, courts have consistently held the standard for invoking the Fifth Amendment rights is if you believe that you might be charged. Now, along with refusing to even answer the basic questions, he used the Fifth Amendment more broadly than he should be allowed to use it. He says he refused to testify about whether he knew DOJ employees who worked there at various times. He wouldn't even list his employment status. Throughout the depo, he invoked the same blanket objection repeatedly. For example, we asked him about how he worked with two other government employees, John Crabb and Stephen D'Antuono. They say, hey, Thomas, who's John Crabb? Decline. Who's Stephen D'Antuono? Decline. Who was the U.S. attorney when you started your job? Decline. Okay, so testifying that Matt Graves was the U.S. attorney in November, is that something you can't answer here? Decline. Who succeeded Rosenstein? Attorney said, decline. And it goes on and on. Decline, decline, decline. Are you currently working as a lawyer? Decline. Nonstop. Now, notably, as a former federal prosecutor, he knows he's not allowed to do this. But despite knowledge of this, he did it because he knows nothing's going to happen. All individuals have an obligation to comply. And so now he is improperly asserting his privileges, and he's trying to do it corruptly to impede our investigation. He's just going to say, it's not corrupt. I'm just worried I'm going to get indicted. So he'll have a plausible explanation for it. I'm afraid you guys are going to indict me, so I'm not answering any of your questions. That changed after I started to see James Comey get indicted, for example. So although the DOJ twice authorized him to testify, he's not. Windham's various shifting justifications for refusing this were facially unreasonable and were not offered in a manner consistent with our rules. Now, his conduct can only be understood as an intentional effort to obstruct us. And so we think this is obstruction. We've enclosed documentation of the entire deposition, and we hope you prosecute him. Gosh, what do you guys think? Think a jury in Washington, D.C. is going to indict him for this? They'll just come out and say he was invoking his Fifth Amendment right. The judge will say he was invoking his Fifth Amendment right. You need to instruct the grand jurors about this. And so Pam Bondi's going to get this one on her desk. Honestly, I don't know what she's going to be able to do with it, but I hope they have more, right? I hope that they have more here. This guy, as you can tell, is lawyering up. It's a smart thing to do. Don't answer any questions if you can help it, because what they're trying to do is compare and contrast his statements with the other guys who are talking, J.P. Cooney and the rest of them. So Jim Jordan came out. Thank you, Jim, for the attempt and for sending the letter. Here's what he said when he was over on Fox News.
Answer key questions like the fundamental question, was this investigation political? Was it designed to harm President Trump politically?
Yes.
One of his deputies who worked for the special counsel took his Fifth Amendment rights, exercised his Fifth Amendment privilege to that question. We've interviewed multiple lawyers who worked for the special counsel. Two of them each exercised their Fifth Amendment liberties over 70 times. So we want to ask some of those same questions to Jack Smith. And then you couple that, the failure of them to answer questions, exercise their Fifth Amendment right, you couple that with what we know Jack Smith has done and what we've learned of late, like the fact they were spying on 8 members of Congress, like some of those lawyers that we talked about who took the Fifth were part of taking Scott Perry's phone from him 3 years ago. So you have all that history, not to mention the raid on Mar-a-Lago, not to mention the gag order they put on President Trump, not to mention we've had a defense lawyer for one of the defendants say that he was offered a what some might call a bribe when he said, we thought you were interested in this judge position. Why are you defending one of these people that we want to investigate in the January 6th investigation? So
Stanley
all
Woodward.
that history is why we think it's now appropriate to bring in Jack Smith and why we've asked him to come in.
On your letter, you say, want to do it by October 28th, 13 days from now. Coincidentally or ironically, however you want to characterize.
Okay, so I guess that was an older clip from Jim Jordan from Fox News. But they're reporting the same. He's now calling on a criminal referral for Thomas Windham, and Eric Schmidt, the senator, came out today and he said, yeah, Jack Smith, we need to expand our investigation into him. We know that the senators put in there a little provision to go after Jack Smith and the other people responsible for spying on them. But here's what he says in the aftermath of this referral over from one of Jack's top henchmen for prosecution for obstruction.
I think we should expand it. I actually think any individual in this country who was victimized by Jack Smith at the Justice Department ought to be able to sue in a private right of action in any organization. I think this kind of litigation will help expose this sort of dirtbag that Jack Smith was.
House Republicans want to repeal it. They consider it self-dealing amongst GOP senators.
Well, I think there's a lot of outside organizations. I mean, Turning Point USA, for example, was targeted. And by the way, that's just from the whistleblowers that we know of. There's probably a lot of other individuals and organizations that were caught up in this Soviet-style dragnet that Jack Smith dreamed up in his fantasy of being some sort of hero. He's the villain in this. And so I think more litigation, the better to expose all this. So my perspective is we ought to expand it broader.
And hopefully their inquiry continues and we have more subpoenas going out to drag more of these people in to testify. If they don't come in and testify, then they can make criminal referrals over. I don't know if obstruction is going to carry a lot of weight based on the fact that he's just really not talking. And I think a lot of grand jurors would look at that and say, you don't have to talk. You don't have to answer anything. And so the fact that he was talking and then stopped talking, that's now obstruction. Okay. But I think they're going to need a little bit more than that. So hopefully it continues and the investigation reveals more. They'll talk to this person who'll say, actually, Thomas Windham did this. And then they can cross-reference that and then bring indictments for the real crimes, not process crimes for lying or obstructing to Congress, but the actual crimes that they were involved in, which were really massive conspiracies against our rights. The same charges that they brought against the president should be brought against them, and we'll keep our eye on this one. But another criminal referral from Congress going over to Pam Bondi. We'll see what comes out of the DOJ on that one. All right, now, let's turn our attention to this one because we got some more subpoenas that are flying out. And you can see this one out the door. Subpoenas flying for Stacey Plaskett. We now know that she was texting with Jeffrey Epstein in the middle of a congressional hearing. Democrats all freaked out trying to cover for her nefarious activities. But now James Comer is sending subpoenas out to people who have knowledge about Stacey Plaskett and her records. She was texting with Epstein, but she also got a bunch of money from Epstein. And so this was a letter that came out, really a subpoena, from the Oversight Committee. You can see Comer is saying this one, saying that today I've just issued subpoenas going over to JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank for Jeffrey Epstein's financial records to go in there and see maybe he was donating and sending some money over to Stacy and the rest of the Democrats, but also sending a letter to the U.S. attorney down there. Stacey Plaskett, of course, is the representative over from the Virgin Islands. You see that right there on her wiki. Virgin Islands at large, the incumbent, been there for a little while and is a Democrat and was texting with Jeffrey. So she now is getting her record subpoenaed, and Comer is sending a letter over to the attorney general down there in that district saying, can you please help us figure out what was happening here and investigate her if necessary so that we can see how she was interfacing with Epstein and the rest of these perverts? Comer, of course, going to be referencing this exchange, which I think the Republicans should play every single day on all of their campaigns. Every time the Democrats talk about Epstein, all they can do is just talk about Stacey Plaskett, talk about Brooklyn Obama, a.k.a. Hakeem Jeffries, talk about Larry Summers, talk about Catherine Rumler, who had a pee break with Jeffrey over email. So here was the exchange once more. You can see Ro Khanna sitting right next to Stacey Plaskett.
Obama was president of the
Are
United
you
States.
chewing, says Jeffrey.
And while we were once driving through a struggling neighborhood in Chicago,
Not anymore,
he
I'm not.
commented that only black people could live that way. Attorney
Cohen brought up
privilege, yes, I will
Rona,
turn it over.
R-O-N-A, keeper of the
Mr.
secrets.
Meadows pointed out, misled this committee even today
Says
in a
Jeffrey.
written submission that contradicted your testimony. You have suggested you are going to review that. Did you review? Are you
Rona.
going to review it in our next break to correct the record? Yes or no?
Says
Yes.
Stacy. Quick,
Question,
I'm up
you
next.
helped out the
Is that an
president's
acronym?
campaign, or were involved in the campaign as a representative, as a spokesman, even in your words today? It was
That's
your
his
idea for the
assistant, says
campaign
Jeffrey.
dating back to 2011.
Look at her.
Is that accurate? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Weisenberg and other individuals, Ms. Rona. Who are those individuals? Are they with the Trump Organization?
They are.
Are there other people that we should be meeting with?
So Alan Weisselberg is the chief financial officer.
Uh-huh.
The
You got to
Trump
quickly give us
Organization.
as many names as you can
Fire 'em
so we
out.
can get to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Ms. Rona, what is Ms. Rona's position?
Rona Graff is Mr. Trump's executive assistant.
And would she be able to corroborate many of the statements that you've made here?
Yes, her office is directly next to
Good
his,
work.
and she's
From Jeffrey.
involved in a lot that went on.
Yeah, and this was a congressional hearing to try to take out Trump. Jeffrey's colluding with Stacey Plaskett to ask questions of Michael Cohen, who's also colluding and trying to smear and eliminate Trump. It's been going on one big incestuous, disgusting circle. So now we got subpoenas that are going out and requests for information and assistance from Comer. They posted this over from the Oversight Committee, and a bunch of letters have now gone out. But here is how they kick it off. They say, today, we're sending subpoenas. We're going after some financial records. Comer is also requesting that the Virgin Islands Attorney General provide documents that have to do with Epstein, and you know who's going to be caught in those? Stacey Plaskett. The House Oversight Committee is conducting a thorough review of the federal government's investigation of Epstein and Ghislaine. The committee is committed to providing accountability, and we're going to work on that. We've also released 65,000 pages of documents. Bill Barr's depot, Alexander Acosta's depot. We also subpoenaed the DOJ for a bunch of other things. For documents and comms, the DOJ has given us 33,000 pages to date. Now, the committee posted these all on our website. Comer also issued deposition subpoenas for Bill and Hillary, and they're refusing to come in to answer questions about that. We're going to see what James Comer has to say about that coming up. Is he going to refer them over for criminal prosecution? That is a good one. Refusing a congressional subpoena, there is good precedent. You go to prison for that, 4 months, give or take. That's what Navarro got. That's what Bannon got. And Bill and Hillary, they can go in together. That's fine too. Just give them a cell and they can hang out there together. So they all got subpoenas. We've also deposed a bunch of people and now sent subpoenas on August 25th, more subpoenas to Ghislaine and more. So the Republicans have been all over it, and the Democrats are now finding out that they don't really like what they're seeing, because we find out that their representatives are texting with a convicted offender from Congress. So here's one letter that went out from the Oversight Committee to the Attorney General down there in the U.S. Virgin Islands, over working at the DOJ Office of the Attorney General. They say, Dear Attorney General Rhee, the Committee on Oversight is reviewing possible mismanagement. Mismanagement. That's hilarious. Do you mean cover up? No. We just mean they just mismanaged it a little bit. That's how it happened. Of the federal government's investigation and the circumstances about Epstein's death, the operation of trafficking rings, and other legislative solutions for this, maybe like, getting rid of the FBI and the CIA would be a good start. Now, Mr. Epstein owned Little St. James and Great St. James, two private islands located near St. Thomas and part of the Virgin Islands. Epstein also maintained business entities in the Virgin Islands throughout his life, including the entity known as the Financial Trust Company, which got hundreds of millions of dollars in tax incentives between 1999 and 2012. For what? Financial Trust Company. It's like, what does that even mean? You can trust us financially, and we have a company around it. Mr. Epstein also maintained ties to high-level officials in the Virgin Islands. He employed the wife of the governor. Oh, that's a mistake. The governor's wife went to work for Epstein, and he's like, okay, have a great day, honey, at work. See you when you get home for dinner. An architecture firm owned by the governor's uncle and donated money, sponsorships, scholarships, and gave dozens of computers to a local lawmaker. News reporting also indicates that the court filings describe that Mr. Epstein also allegedly paid law enforcement entities like the police department in the Virgin Islands. Additionally, Epstein remained in communication with the governor of the Virgin Islands, Kenneth Mapp, and delegate to the House of Representatives, Stacey Plaskett. In documents that were published by the committee on November 12th, the documents show Mr. Epstein emailed Governor Mapp's official account in November 2016. They also show that Epstein engaged in a text conversation with Plaskett during a congressional hearing in February 2019, months before he was indicted again. The above business and financial transactions, coupled with new documents displaying correspondence between Epstein and other officials, demonstrate the interconnectedness of the Virgin Islands and Epstein. Now, the DOJ and your office of the Attorney General down there, you are in custody and control of documents that will further our investigation and potential legislative solutions. In 2020, another Attorney General called Denise N. George, she filed a law enforcement action. Under the rules against Epstein and the estate, a settlement was reached in December 2022, resolving this action, requiring the defendants to pay the government of the Virgin Islands $105 million from Epstein's estate in cash, plus 1/2 of the proceeds from the sale of Little St. James. Man, they got their money. Now, after a settlement was reached with the Epstein estate, a separate lawsuit was filed by your office against JP Morgan Chase, saying that JP Morgan also facilitated this trafficking venture, not only by banking Epstein and allowing him to withdraw $1.7 million in cash to pay these victims, but also by banking the victims themselves. Before the case went to trial, a settlement was reached, and JP Morgan also had to pay $75 million to the Virgin Islands. Why are all these people paying money if nobody did anything wrong? The committee believes that the documents related to Epstein, his estate, and the Virgin Islands litigation will aid our investigations, and we need them. So, Attorney General, in the Virgin Islands, we need everything. By December 2nd, please. All of the files in this estate file. All of the files in the Virgin Islands versus Epstein's estate. All of the files when you sued JP Morgan Chase. And all documents related to any criminal investigations of either Jeffrey or Ghislaine. Now, it's imperative that we get this. We have a job to combat these monsters, and we're working on it. Sincerely, your friend, James Comer. Please send those to us immediately. James Comer closing that one out, but that's just to the Attorney General. Then other documents, these are actual subpoenas, went out to the other banks. Here's what they sent. All right, Stacy, lawyer for JP Morgan Chase, get ready for a subpoena coming your way. Says the Committee on Oversight has something for you. We're now investigating Ghislaine and Maxwell. We have a lot of power and authority to investigate these things, and that's what we're doing now. The facts and circumstances demand scrutiny. At the outset of this Congress back in February, we sent a letter over to the DOJ for a briefing. The task force sent another letter saying we want all of the files. And then Trump posted in July, I've tasked Pam Bondi to go get the grand jury records, which were subsequently denied. Then on August 25th, the committee issued a subpoena. On September 8th, the estate provided some of the records. We got the birthday book, Epstein's will, the non-prosecution agreement. We got other things. 2 contact books that belonged to Epstein. The committee also got records about his bank records. We're aware that he held accounts at JP Morgan Chase and banked with them for about 2 decades. And then in 2013, JP Morgan closed all of his accounts. And you got to get out of here, man. You're doing some bad stuff. Additionally, then, in 2019, JP Morgan Chase began an internal investigation of Epstein. They called it Project Jeep. Under Project Jeep, investigators filed a report with regulators that retroactively flagged 4,700 suspicious Epstein transactions. Weird. The committee is interested in documents pertaining to Project Jeep, and we'd like to see them. Now, the records sought in this subpoena will assist our committee in oversight. And there's litigation. Looks like a bunch of people missed some red flags of abuse. Yeah. These records will assist us in identifying these red flags, and we'd like to see them. Sincerely, your friend, James Comer, chairman on the Oversight Committee. And the last one goes over to Deutsche Bank. And this guy looks like he is the lawyer for Deutsche Bank. Just look at that name. Dr. Kampfer. Very, very Deutsche, isn't it? Now, the Committee on Oversight, Mr. Comfer, is now needing some info from you. We know JP Morgan Chase is all over the place in this case, but we also have some questions for Deutsche. The committee is the principal oversight committee in Congress, in case you didn't know. The facts and circumstances surrounding Epstein and Maxwell's cases have received a lot of interest, and we need some info from you. We sent a bunch of letters. A lot of this mirrors the other letter. Then the committee sent a subpoena. When we got those subpoenas, we learned that he held accounts at Deutsche Bank. The records sought by this subpoena will assist in the committee's oversight, and that's why we're writing. In short, the records sought by the subpoena are critical to our investigation, so not a lot of details, even shorter than the JP Morgan letter. So 3 letters, 2 subpoenas, and questions about Stacey Plaskett and her financial incentives to be using her time, her seat as a delegate in Congress, to go after and support the attacks on President Trump. So we had the DOJ out today talking about some other case that nobody cares about so that they don't have to talk about Epstein. But then they got questions about Epstein. And here's what Pam Bondi said about why this sudden change. They're cooperating. They found a bunch of new information. They're going to work hard on it, blah, blah, blah. Here's what Pam said.
The issue with the new information that you just indicated, is the department seeking information perhaps from the Epstein estate, because Mr. Blanche did not have that information when he interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell? What new information, and would you limit the new investigation to just those named persons that the president talked about, or is this a broad, open-ended investigation?
I would refer to the Deputy Attorney General's post that he put out on X, and we're not going to say anything else on that because now it is a pending investigation in the Southern District of New York. You're on point.
Oh, sorry. We can't talk about it. It's a pending investigation. So you pass the bill and the bill says, you know, if it's a pending investigation, I guess we can't talk about it. So we can't talk about it. So let's just go ask Todd Blanche. Todd, what are you saying about this today, this afternoon? And here's what Todd Blanche, the deputy AG, had to say.
What was the question? The Attorney General has previously said that she would refuse to release any information that would re-victimize the victims. And I'm just wondering whether that stands, after the passage of this law.
Well, the law isn't signed into law yet, and of course we're going to protect victims, and the law as written allows us to do that. You know, the law has carve-outs to protect victims and to protect information surrounding victims, which is what we do not only in this case but in every case. So it's a fair question, but neither the House nor the Senate's version, the same version, suggested otherwise. So.
All right, so they're going to release information. They're still going to protect the victims. And here's Pam explaining why the sudden shift on what she's seen that has created this new energy at the DOJ.
Madam Attorney General, the DOJ statement earlier this year saying that the files would not release mentioned the fact that the review of the documents and the evidence did not suggest that any additional investigation of third parties was warranted.
Yeah, we remember that. It was that 2-page letter that we read here, and we all were just 1 second away from throwing our computers right out the window. Just, all right, that's it. Gone. Pam's like, we've investigated everything. All the files on my desk I forgot about. They're gone. Phase 1, forget all that. 2-page letter. Nothing to see here. And then Cash and Dan came out. He killed himself. He killed himself. Okay, so what changed, man?
What changed since then that you launched this investigation?
Information that has come for information. There's information new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads. If there are any victims, we encourage all victims to come forward, and we will continue to provide maximum transparency under the law.
Okay, so once again, not saying anything, but new information has come to light, which we can't wait to see what it is. So we had some questions, and always do, for the victims. And we have a lot of empathy for victims. We don't want anybody to be attacked, violently attacked, abused as kids. All of that, of course, is reprehensible. We're just asking, how can we help you? Can you please give us some information so that we can, prosecute the case? Any other person who has been the victim of a crime interfaces with law enforcement and explains the nature of the crime. If somebody punches you in the face and you know who did it, and you go into the police department and they say, who punched you in the face? Do you know? You say, yeah. Can you tell me? No, I can't. They're going to laugh at you and say, well, what do you want us to do about it? You know who did this to you and you don't want to tell us? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, maybe we can find him on our own. When did he punch you? Can't tell you. Okay. Anybody else in the room who saw him punch you? No. Any other corroborating evidence about the punch? No. Anything on recording? No. Nothing. Everybody has to explain it. But we haven't gotten much from this whole parade of women that have been out day and day in front of the cameras. So Cuomo asked this woman about it, and here is what she had to say. Sounds like
the other question is, why haven't the names come out before now, unless they've just been subject?
The question is, why is my pause button not working on this video? Because I hadn't finished my thought there, Chris. There it works. But I did have a question about the mustache. What's going on with his mustache? Is this a new look for Chris? All right, let's see how it works out.
The names come out before now, unless they've just been subject to civil suits that were settled so people can't say anything or won't say anything. If you know that there are other people other than Epstein, other than Prince or former Prince, whatever his name is.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Why haven't they come out? And why hasn't a list been put together already?
She's so disgusted with the question.
It's so hard to answer that question because a list has been put together for years. Our attorneys, survivors, we've named names for years. And when I said we'll release a list, it was just speaking to more survivors to get more names on the list. The same names keep coming up. The same names that we've given with our attorneys to the DOJ and the FBI is the same names they've always had. So we do want to help, but they already have had all the information they've needed to release for years now. And so to answer your question, I don't know why it's taken so long. I mean, isn't that the million-dollar question?
Well, so I guess our question would be like, have you provided evidence? Like, yes, they've got a lot of information. They've got a lot of evidence. Like, there's a lot of evidence about a lot of things. A lot of, people are attacking people. They have it all in their possession. The key thing that we need to have happen is connect it to you. Like, if you're a victim, do they have a case filed for you? Like, this person came in, reported a crime. These 3 people abused this person at the age of whatever. And then there was a cover up and there's a case file around that. Is that what they're saying? And the FBI has all of these allegations? Because if so, then they should be able to come out and say, no, we filed a report with the police and we communicate. Maybe they have. I've not seen a lot of it. There's been allegations that have been, fleshed out that we've covered in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. 4 victims that we heard came and testified about Maxwell and her abuse. But that would also be the time to present your other evidence, right? While these prosecutions are happening, they prosecuted Ghislaine for some evidence. So is there a case file for these people? Or are these just civil claims? The government has tons of evidence and can speculate about a bunch of people doing bad things, but we got to connect it to you because you're the victim who was the subject of the abuse. So I still have not heard that happen yet. It's just like, well, they know they have everything, so they should just release it and do something with it. But it needs to relate to you.
I think so. I mean, you heard what I said off the top of the show. I've always wanted things released and for the right reasons. I don't know that everybody involved has the same motivations. But why are you guys afraid to put out the names? The attorneys say don't?
She's disgusted.
Death threats. A lot of us are mothers. We want the names to be out there. We want justice. But why do
Okay, so do you think that you're not going to get... So here's my question. She says that there's evidence that she has already given to the feds that implicate these very powerful people. And so why is she not getting death threats already? Or why are they not trying to take her out already? if you abused her and you're a billionaire and you say, oh, Dan, she's going to come out and pin this on me. She's already on Chris Cuomo's show. She's already been in front of Congress multiple times. So if you were the abuser of her and you were a rich, powerful man with all the means and mechanisms to take them out, isn't it a good time, like now, to do that? So I guess she's not getting death threats now, but as soon as she names a bad person who abused her, people are going to give her death threats. Okay, I can understand that. Death threats. But you know, what's interesting about the thing with like rich and powerful men is there's a lot of people that oppose them. And I think Trump was a pretty rich and powerful man. And Stormy Daniels, the porn star, apparently has more courage than a lot or all, not all. Some of them I think have named, you know, Glenn and other people by name. Many of the Epstein victims, allegedly. Stormy Daniels came out and said, President Trump did this to me. I had these deals. E. Jean Carroll, the crazy woman, came out and testified against the president that he Bergdorfed her in a dressing room at Bergdorf. So she's got apparently a lot more courage, and she can survive all the death threats against rich and powerful people. She had a full trial. What about all the brave women who came out and explained what Epstein was doing to them? They're all courageous, okay? And we're all going to get death threats and all the things. Like, we got it. And I'm not encouraging that. That's illegal, by the way. You make a death threat to somebody, you should face justice for that. That's completely inappropriate, and you should go to jail for that. Many do. So, okay, that's fine. Death threats. Stormy Daniels came out, and she testified against Trump. I'm sure she got a lot of hate and criticism for that, but she did it. So can you just, you know, have the same integrity as a porn star?
Why do we have to do it? That's a very scary thing, and I think you know that.
Why do we have to do it? It's because you're the victim, all right? You're the victim. If you want justice for being victimized, then you have to facilitate, you have to interface with law enforcement. Every other woman who's been a part of abuse has to also go through that. It's just part of the system. Men too. Man is a victim of domestic violence. He's got to go in and explain what his wife did if he wants her to be prosecuted. And if he doesn't show up to trial or she doesn't show up to trial, the case gets dismissed. Because you need witnesses, you need evidence, you need an actual victim who was abused. It's not complicated.
You know, it's just, we want to help to put the names out there, but it's not our responsibility to do so. And I think you know why. I mean, so many people, many of the survivors.
I get it. I just want you to tell people,
have received
Lisa,
many death threats.
I want you to tell people. I want you to tell people because, you know, based on what side you're on, and I know nobody should have a side when it comes to defending people who traffic women, young women especially, or any women, there are sides. So that's why.
I don't know that there are sides. I don't know who's in favor of trafficking women. We're not saying that at all. We're not, you know, we're not trying to dump on these women or, you know, we want the truth. We don't just believe all people or believe all women. We need some evidence, and you need to participate in the criminal process. It's not too much to ask. Every other woman who got abused needs to make a formal complaint with the police and provide evidence. Now, if she's saying she's done that and there's a cover-up of that, well, then we should have some evidence of that. No, we made an official complaint. We talked to the DOJ. We talked to this FBI agent. We called the police department and said this happened at some point in time. And then they took my case file as the victim and they let me hang out to dry, but there's a paper trail. And if they haven't done that, they're just like, well, you should know what happened to me. Well, we wouldn't know if you told us. Can you tell us? No, because you should already know. You got all the files. Okay, well, we can't help you as a particular victim. Doesn't mean we don't want justice, but your case is a bad case because you're not helping us with it. So that's the thing. And her scorn, I think, and her body language just makes me go, oh gosh, this whole thing feels ridiculous. So here's Comer. Now, we want answers on this. Some of the biggest perverts out there, like Bill Clinton, got subpoenas to come in and testify to Congress, and they've been ignoring them. And we did a whole show on it yesterday, and it was a great one. But now Comer was asked to follow up on that. Hey, James, what happens if Bill and Hillary don't come in to testify? What you going to do about that there, Jimbo?
Mr. Chairman, there are two very important people that you subpoenaed early on, or excuse me, that you asked to voluntarily cooperate. They didn't schedule their interviews. Now there's a subpoena, but Bill and Hillary Clinton, if they continue to duck you, will you take them to court? Will you try to enforce a subpoena? Will you go the Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro route?
100%. We're going to go that route.
We
expect to hear from Bill and Hillary Clinton. Look, Donald Trump's answered questions for years about Jeffrey Epstein. Every day he gets asked questions about Epstein, and he answers them in front of the American people. We've subpoenaed Republicans and Democrats. 2 Republicans have come forward, Bill Barr and Alex Acosta. They did interviews and deposition, and those were tough, but they did them. They didn't back down. Other Democrats have sent letters that saying they knew nothing about Epstein, which would hold in court if something ever comes out that they did know something, then they committed perjury there. But the Clintons have never responded. They're the one group in this investigation that's never had to answer questions in front of a credible reporter, and they've never certainly answered questions from attorneys or members of Congress. So we expect the Clintons to come in, or I expect the Clintons to be met with the same fate that Bannon and Navarro were met with when the Democrats were in control.
Hell yeah, there, James. That's the same thing that we expect too. Because they set the precedent, no one's above the law. If you violate a congressional subpoena, like they said Bannon and Navarro did, they got 4 months in prison, both of them. And I think Hillary and Bill will have a nice time together. They'll actually work some things out as they sit in custody in prison. All right, so good stuff on that one. Let's turn our attention to the censure scandal and what's going on over here. Democrats freaking out over Stacey Plaskett in a bit of a panic. We've got a bunch of clips queued up here of them melting down, including clips of Stacey Plaskett trying to explain herself away on this. She hit the floor on the House side and went into why she was caught texting with Epstein. You may have seen the video multiple times. It is her in Congress. Jeffrey says, "Are you chewing?" She says, "Not anymore. Of course not." What about Rona? Epstein tells her specifically, talk about Rona. She does. Michael Cohen, the convicted perjurer, lies some more. And then Epstein responds, "Good work." So why was she texting with somebody who was convicted, a sex offender on the registry for soliciting a minor back in Florida and communicating with him like it wasn't anything? Well, here's what she said on the House floor yesterday, trying to talk herself out of getting censured. And the Republicans didn't vote for a censure, and she was not censured, as we'll see. And the question, of course, is why?
At the beginning of that hearing, the ranking member, Jim Jordan, had the disrespect to Elijah Cummings, may he rest in peace and his name be a memory,
blaming Jim
after not allowing Mr. Jordan to shut the committee hearing down. And I turned to Mr. Jordan and told him to have respect for the chair and to basically shut up. And that moment went viral. And I began to get...
All the ladies in the back, you see them? You see that one right there? Yeah, here it goes.
And that moment went viral. And I began to get innumerable texts from friends, from foes, from constituents,
from convicted
about
offenders.
What was happening in that hearing.
Yeah.
And I got a text from Jeffrey Epstein, who at the time was my constituent, who was not public knowledge at that time that he was under federal investigation.
No, but it was public knowledge that he was convicted. He pled guilty to 2 counts. One was soliciting prostitution. The other soliciting a minor for prostitution. Remember that?
And
what?
Who was sharing information with me.
Yeah.
Now, I heard recently from someone that I was seeking advice from him. Let me tell you something.
Tell us.
I don't need to get advice on how to question anybody from any individual.
She doesn't. But she was. She was controlled like a dog. He said, "Hey, stop chewing." She's like, "Yes, sir." Spit it right out. And then he said, after like a little puppet, Jeffrey Epstein was like, "Here you go, Stacy. Say this. Who's Rona?" he says good job to her, just like good boy when you say to your dog when he does something good outside. But of course, Stacy melting down, trying to explain herself away, just a constituent, okay? And she's not being controlled. It's in the text messages. We can all see it, Stacy. So Rascin came out. He's also screaming about this, got Hakeem, got the rest of them. And this is what we call pounding the table. When they're caught red-handed, man, they've got no other choice but to scream. This is 2 minutes. We're not going to listen to the full thing, but here's a taste of Raskin's meltdown.
The gentleman's recognized.
And I rise in opposition to this resolution. We're here today on the floor to support the complete disclosure of information related to Jeffrey Epstein and his billion-dollar international child sex trafficking ring. And our side of the aisle at least supports the release of information relating to anybody who had anything to do with it, whether they're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or what have you, period. We insist on complete, full disclosure. This resolution has nothing to do with that. This seems to me to be one more pathetic effort to distract and divert attention from the fact that the president's name appeared more than 1,000 times already in the floor, and we've got nothing but obstruction, opposition, resistance, evasion, distraction, and diversion from the other side. And now we get one more resolution like this. The resolution actually proposes a disciplinary censure against Representative Stacey Plaskett.
It does.
But amazingly alleges no misconduct. It does not allege the violation of the Constitution. It does not allege the violation of a federal law or a state law or local law. It does not even allege a violation of the ethics rules of the House of Representatives, and yet they want to censure her and throw her off of her committee. This, a distinguished former federal prosecutor, diligent public servant, representative of the people of the Virgin Islands. Now, criminal justice has two parts to it. One...
Okay, explain it to us. Explain why your representative was texting with a convicted sex offender. How about that? So Stacy then went on over on CNN, and credit to CNN for digging in on her on this one, saying, do you regret this at all? Stacy, can you explain yourself? Why were you texting with Jeffrey Epstein? You've been screaming about President Trump being in the pocket of a pedophile network or something, but he had your cell phone number and he was telling you to stop chewing because it's so disgusting. In fact, can you spit your gum out right now, please? We don't want to have you chewing that here on CNN.
Together, and you ask the questions. And I understand you're saying, look, he was a constituent, right? And whether or not they're good or bad, you're just trying to get information to get to the truth. But at this time, this was happening after he had already pleaded guilty to state prostitution charges. And then there was that Miami Herald article that came out in 2018 detailing how widespread the sexual abuse was.
In the Virgin Islands.
Women who said that he sexually abused her. So, abused them, I should say. So I'm wondering, as you look back, do you think that it was an error in judgment to be communicating with him at all? Do you have any regrets?
Well, listen, I think Jeffrey Epstein is a reprehensible person. Absolutely disgusting.
But
I lived in a house during childhood with a mother who had been sexually abused by her dad. And I know the effect that had on her as well as us.
So why were you texting
as her
with
family? And so I understand what the victims are going through, and I want them to get their their justice.
But if their abusers are your constituents and they've got information you need, then you should talk to them in the middle of a congressional hearing.
Their piece out of this. I believe that Jeffrey Epstein had information, and I was going to get information to get at the truth. Having a friendship with him is not something that I would deem to have. And so I'm just looking forward. I'm moving forward. And I think that that's what we as American people should do, is move forward. If individuals are not involved in illegal activity, extending his criminal enterprise or his financial enterprise or all of those things, I think that we need to look at what people are doing moving forward.
Wait, let me just better understand that. What is that point? Because at the time he was a known sex offender and it had been detailed all the sexual abuse.
There are a lot of people who have done a lot of crimes, and as a prosecutor, you get information from people where you can.
And
I've interviewed confidential informants.
My best friends.
I've interviewed narcotics, drug traffickers, and others. And that doesn't mean that I'm their friend. That doesn't mean that they are friendly with me. It means that they have information that I need.
Okay, this wasn't an investigation. he was telling you to stop being so disgusting and stop chewing into the microphone. Nobody wants to hear your saliva smacking around in your mouth while we're trying to ensnare Trump.
And that I'm trying to get at the truth, and that's what I did.
So no regrets, basically, is what you're saying.
I'm moving forward.
Before I let you go, Congresswoman.
I'm moving forward. And the Democrats, well, okay, I guess that's all right. Not a big deal at all. So Hakeem, the Brooklyn Obama, who also wanted to have dinner with Epstein, also came out. He's screaming about this, also melting down.
We believe in transparency. We believe in accountability. We believe in due process. That's the opposite of what is happening on the floor today. And let me be very clear about Stacey Plaskett. She's a woman of great intelligence and a woman of great integrity.
Not good manners, though, which is why Epstein had to scold her.
And she deserves better than what she's receiving from House Republican extremists.
What?
She deserves the opportunity to be heard.
We did hear from her. She didn't answer it at all. So he's not happy that she's getting censured or was about to get censured. And he went on with Caitlin Collins, and she asked him 3 times, are you okay with this? Okay, maybe it's not a federal crime. Maybe we should put some rules around Congress. If they're so dumb that they have to text everybody to get questions out to their witnesses, then maybe they shouldn't be in Congress. They should do their homework and come prepared without getting info from convicted criminals. But here was Hakeem, the Brooklyn Obama, the same guy whose campaign sent a message to Epstein's people saying, he's going to be just like Barry. You're going to love him. Would you give us some money? He showed up with Caitlin, and she had some questions for him.
Being here, obviously a lot of movement up on Capitol Hill today. And you heard Stacey Plaskett there. She was arguing her texts with Jeffrey Epstein were not illegal. But in your view, were they appropriate?
Well, Stacey Plaskett is not accused of violating any House rule, any law, any statute.
Caitlin just said that.
And she's clearly and unequivocally denounced Jeffrey Epstein. And I think what the survivors fought for today is the type of transparency that came out of the House, went through the Senate, and is now on its way.
She was texting with the man who abused those survivors. Did you miss that point?
To Donald Trump's desk, where hopefully he'll sign it into law, because at the end of the day, all the American people are asking for is just the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which is why these Epstein files that Donald Trump and his administration has been hiding for months need to be released.
But do you think it was appropriate for her to be texting with Jeffrey Epstein 11 years after he pleaded guilty?
I mean, I have not had a conversation with Stacey Plaskett to discuss this issue because we've been focused today on making sure that there was a decisive vote.
Because if you have a conversation with her about it, then you're going to have to talk about that conversation. So the best strategy is just not to talk about it.
Related to the Epstein files and the release, I'm thankful for the work of Representative Massey, of Ro Khanna, but most importantly, the survivors.
Do you plan to talk to her about it?
I think that we successfully defeated a resolution that lacked any basis, was not credible, and was being brought by an individual who was trying to weaponize this issue to reinvigorate his own failed gubernatorial campaign in South Carolina. It was rejected on a bipartisan basis on the floor today. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, I was just asking if you personally believe messaging with Jeffrey Epstein, who was at that point a registered.
Yeah, no, he's cool with it. They don't care at all. Large swaths of their party are in alignment with that. So Representative Ralph Norman said, how about we just introduce a resolution to censure her? And of course, that failed for whatever reason yesterday. But here's what it looked like. You can see not a long document. It says, Stacey Plaskett inappropriately coordinated with convicted sex offender Epstein in a congressional hearing, which is completely ridiculous. And she also was actively coached by Epstein during the hearing. And afterwards, he said, good work, little doggy. Nice job there. Thanks for following my orders. Says, whereas Epstein was known, he was a convicted sex offender, having pled guilty and convicted for procuring child prostitutions and of soliciting a prostitute in 2018. She knew all about it because a lot of this was centered out of the Virgin Islands and Florida, where in the course of that investigation, the FBI compiled reports on dozens of confirmed minors who were credibly alleging abuse by Epstein. And then Epstein was under federal investigation beginning in November 18th, 2 months before she got the text messages. He was under investigation, and the reporting also came out. Then he was arrested July 2019, charged with 1 count trafficking of minors, 1 count conspiracy to commit trafficking of a minor, later found dead. Then documents that were released showed that she was communicating with him in real time, following orders. He said bark, she did. Is known to have had extensive political and professional connections, and her relationship stands in stark contrast to her public image that she is curated. I'm a prosecutor. I put away these people who abuse women. I protect vulnerable women. I care about the victims, as she's texting the abuser. Says Plaskett literally got instructions from him, is deeply concerning. She's on the intelligence community. This impacts her integrity, her fitness to serve, and more. And so she deserves to be censured and removed from the Permanent Select Committee. So that came across Congress yesterday. And then, of course, the Republicans and the Democrats said, how about no? We're okay. If we censure her for texting Epstein, there's going to be a lot more of us who need to be censured, because I'm sure it's not just her. I'm sure if there's one congressperson, there are many of them. The House failed to pass my censure of Stacey Plaskett, a sitting member of Congress who took direction from Epstein in the middle of a hearing. This is the problem in Washington. The establishment protects itself and the American people get pushed aside. What happened to accountability? Well, what if they're all in on it? It's a little, it's like too big to fail. You can't really hit her with this, or else everyone else is going to get hit with it. So Anna Paulina Luna came out yesterday and said the Plaskett censure failed because House leadership exchanged the vote to protect another Republican, Corey Mills, that's having a lot of issues and should not be seeking re-election. Here's what Anna Paulina Luna had to say.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
I have a parliamentary inquiry.
The gentlelady from Florida will state her inquiry.
I was wondering if the Speaker of the House of Representatives can explain why leadership on both sides, both Democrat and Republican, are cutting back-end deals to cover up public corruption in the House of Representatives for both Republican and Democrat members of Congress.
Good question.
The gentlelady has not stated a proper parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you very much, but I think the American people know what happened tonight.
Yeah, we do. So many others, I would bet, are texting with Jeffrey. And you don't want to open that can of worms, man, because how deep does it go? Tim Burchett says, Dad gummit. Gad damn it. Something. Dag, dang. You know what he says. He'll say it here, I'm sure. Here he is disgusted after the censure vote, walking out of the House saying, I am totally disgusted with this bunch of losers.
Hey, everybody. Tim Burchett.
What's up, Tim Burchett?
Series to censor Delegate Stacey Plaskett. She's the one that was received a sizable contribution from Epstein, which apparently is legal. I'm not sure, but she also is the one who was texting with him during a committee hearing, getting instructions on how to better attack Trump from Epstein, sending her the text. And so she's on some pretty powerful committees, and that just tells you how corrupt this place is. But the disgusting thing about it was 4 Republicans chose not to vote. 3 Republicans voted present, and 3 Republicans voted no. So it failed. And what they did was they cut a deal. They cut a deal on an ethics vote on a Republican. And that's just wrong. If everybody ought to just stand on their own. If it were truly, we don't care whose party these sex offenders and all this other stuff are in. We're going after them. Then we start cutting deals. To me, it's really disgusting.
That's right.
I get disgusted about some things, but this is one that's really, really bad. You've got some people on there who are they're chairman of committees and things like that. And that's the kind of people we put in leadership. It's bogus and it stinks. And the first opportunity I get to speak to our leadership, I will give them a piece of my mind, and I doubt it will go anywhere. But They're the most sewer-dwelling people, some of these folks, not all of them, but some of them are. It's just disgusting. It really is. Anyway, still, thank y'all for sending me here. We got to keep fighting. We quit, and we lose the whole deal. Remember Reagan said we're one generation away from losing our country. Folks, we're one boat series away from losing our country. We got to wake up. God's given us an incredible gift, and we're just blowing it. It won't be around for everybody. Says for their grandkids. Dadgummit, it might not be around for your kids. Might not make it to the end of the year. Let's take our country back, folks. Thank y'all for saying it here.
I was worried he was not going to say it, but he did. And man, you can really feel it. You can just understand how disgusting it must be to have people coming out to your face saying, we care about the victims. Hang on, let me text my best friend who abused the victims. All the same person. Two different people in one human body. It is disgusting. So shout out to Tim Burchett. We appreciate him. We're going to keep fighting, good sir. Don't give up hope. We also saw Mark Wayne Mullen was out. He had a couple things to say about this. Says, release the files. And people like Stacey Plaskett are using this as a political football. Here's a little bit of Mark Wayne.
Times. You have the delegate from the U.S. Virgin Islands, Plaskett.
We'll come to her in a second.
Yeah, who's saying that, who's literally texting him and took a $30,000 donation for the DCCC on it. So I think this is all just a distraction that they're trying to get away from their policies and their ridiculous agenda that they have. I mean, think about this. We were 43 days in a shutdown. Not one word about the Epstein files. The day the government was reopening, they switched immediately. Every left-leaning fake news outlet started running Epstein stuff immediately when it took place. And I think President Trump was smart by saying, release them. Go ahead, get them all out.
And then we had those.
And we're, of course, waiting for that to happen. But a great question came in from our friend over at Lindell TV. Great questions from her. This is the same woman who got screamed at by Nancy Pelosi. Remember Nancy Pelosi? Shut up! Don't ask questions like that. Well, she had a good one over to Timu Brooklyn Obama. Here's what it sounded like today.
House Oversight Chairman Comer said yesterday on the floor that you had Jeffrey Epstein over for dinner and took money from him back in 2013. This was after he was on the sex offender list. Any comment on that? And will you be holding members accountable regardless of party affiliation if there were any misdeeds related to the Epstein files?
Was that a serious question or a serious statement from malignant clown James Comer that I had Jeffrey Epstein over for dinner?
What are you so mad for?
That I accepted money from Jeffrey Epstein? What's extraordinary to me about the clown show on the other side of the aisle is that they lie with impunity.
Okay.
On things that are objectively verifiable. And why do they do that?
We have the email. You wanted to go hang out with Epstein. You invited him to dinner with Obama.
It's because for months, Republicans have been burying the Jeffrey Epstein files. Not Democrats. Our view continues to be the same.
What?
We want to make sure that what the survivors have asked for, which is full and complete transparency in order to bring about accountability, actually happens. And Congress decisively and in a bipartisan way acted.
Well, did the victims know that you wanted to go have dinner with him and that you were telling Epstein from your campaign emails that you were going to be the Brooklyn Obama? Oh, gosh, how pathetic. Be your own man, Hakeem, okay? You don't need to be like Obama. You're a real person. You're your own entity. You're a creation of God. Act like it, okay? Don't just be second fiddle to Obama. So Comer came out. He said, Hakeem is pretending that these emails aren't real. He's calling me a malignant clown. Is that what he said? That's how mad he is. Here's what Comer said.
Your investigation has uncovered a number of emails, one of which appears to suggest that Hakeem Jeffrey's campaign was inviting Epstein to a fundraiser. Explain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the text messages that
we found in the 23,000 pages of documents that we released to the public. Hakeem Jeffries' campaign was soliciting donations from Epstein. They called Hakeem Jeffries the Barack of Brooklyn, and that Hakeem Jeffries could have a private meeting with Epstein if Epstein wanted, but they really wanted his full financial support. Now, again, can you imagine if there were a Republican that were, soliciting money from Jeffrey Epstein at a time when he'd already been convicted as being a sex offender? There would be massive outrage. But instead, with Hakeem Jeffries, is like what we're seeing with Stacey Plaskett. The Democrats are defending them. They will defend the indefensible, but go all in on Donald Trump.
Yeah, and they'll blame the other side for doing things that they themselves are doing. And so the GOP came out with a winner today. And I think this might be a real photo, but use your best judgment. GOP shared this one. That's Epstein and Plaskett. They're at a Coldplay concert. Get it? But well done, GOP. They look happy together before they got busted. All right, it's a fake, it's an AI image, but it's a funny meme. That's the Coldplay meme. All right, so good stuff over there. We've got the Republicans and the Democrats working hard to not manage their own House. They're going to continue to have a delegate who's a Democrat on their intelligence committees, even though she was getting fed information from a convicted sex offender called Jeffrey. And the left is, I think, a little bit panicked now. Even Hakeem having to explain himself. Why did he want to go to dinner with him after he was already convicted? They look like such a happy couple. All right. Anyways, that's that. I don't even know what to say. All right. So they could have been something if he didn't kill himself, They were singing Coldplay tunes together. We'll keep our eye on it, my friends. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about today. We had a criminal referral, which was honestly a little bit weaker than I thought it was going to be. For obstruction, for Thomas Windham over from the judiciary to Pam Bondi. We'll see if she indicts him on this. I doubt it, but maybe. Then we talked about Plaskett and the fact that she is having some of her records demanded and probably subpoenaed. These are really Epstein records that are being subpoenaed, but they're probably looking at them to see what was going on with Plaskett, given the fact that they also sent a letter over to the Virgin Islands Attorney General asking them, Gordon C. Rhea, for information about other transactions that have occurred, citing Plaskett's text messages and her proximity as the representative of the Virgin Islands. So good materials came out there. Then we talked about the censure, how that failed, how Tim Burchett is just dadgummit disgusted, as are we. But she'll sit on the Intelligence Committee and continue to reign. I wonder who she'll be texting now moving forward. But my friends, it's a beautiful stream. Thank you for subscribing and joining. We are not going to have an after party today, so membos, we'll see you back here tomorrow on the members only stream. If you're a new membo, grab the morning stream from today. But we're heading out the door tonight. We have a gala that we're going to, so that's why no after party. But we got some great comments here. Oh my goodness, we have a big fat dono, man. That's a big one. Thank you for that one. Let's see what else we got cooking. Yeah, there was a lot of news today. And it's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, my friends. What a beautiful day it is. Happy Wednesday indeed. That's Elmo. Very excited. It's all downhill from here. Hey, chat with me. What's up? Hey, good evening, Watcher World. Said, I went back into some streams I missed and I tried to like them, but locals wouldn't allow me to. I noticed all past streams I tried to like but couldn't only had 1 or 2 likes. I'm wondering if that's a glitch or if there's a time frame in which I have to like, then I'm no longer allowed to. Great question, chat with me. I do not know the answer to that. But I do know that there have been some serious internet glitches. And I think locals been subject to some of those. So like Cloudflare went down. So hopefully it's just a glitch. But thanks for asking about it. What's up, Sheila Pooh? Bringing in 10 new membos on the day. Sheila Pooh, thank you for these. RU's coming in. Ted Mitchell, what's up? Av White Boy's here. Q Essence, what's up? Cody Becker. Kathy Hopkins, Mr. Fifth is in the house. Alex Link, Sean Denal, Dietrich Smith, all gifted membos, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila, for that. We appreciate our 10 new friends coming in. Patricia Victory, new membos. Amazing. Grab the stream from this morning. We had a good stream. Lots of Texas stuff. Like some Texas good news, some Texas bad news. And yeah, not real good. Bucky's is Rome. Says Trump can't even clean and paint buildings without a judge stopping him. Yeah, I saw this. They wanted to power wash the Eisenhower building, the executive office building, but this judge says, you're not cleaning anything on my watch. I'm the president. I manage the House. Leaving Breadcrumbs, welcome. What's up, Leaving Breadcrumbs? Nice to have you. Welcome aboard. Grab the members only stream from this morning. Severus, what's up? 20 months as a membo. Hey, sorry, been lurking of late. Severus, I've noticed that, but I'm glad you're here. I notice when you're not here, every single one. Severus, thank you for that. Good to see you here. Thanks for being here for 20 months, too. You're amazing. Chubby, the left have been really railing on the Comey grand jury. How much are they overflowing it all? Or is there an actual chance someone might have sabotaged it all? From Chubby. So I haven't gotten the transcripts yet. There was a hearing today, and it did not sound like it's going well for the DOJ. So we'll probably cover that tomorrow. But I was waiting for some motions or an official order on the Comey case. But yeah, based on what we're seeing, I mean, we'll see what the DOJ files in response to it. But the allegation is that the grand jury didn't actually approve the indictment. Like, they approved some of it, and then they changed some of it, and then they signed it, which would be a big problem. So if that is true, Chubby, it's going to be a big problem. I think the judge will dismiss the case, and then we'll have to have a conversation about that. So hopefully I'm wrong. I haven't looked into it too much. I was prepping on these issues today, but I'm sure we'll come back to that at the next Comey update. Sharpie guy, hey, please check out Barbie Bondi's latest gaslight today. Rob, something is fishy. Please let us know ASAP. Thanks. Well, Sharpie guy, we had a couple of clips from Pam today. Pam, what's going on? We got new information. What kind of information? Can't talk about it. It's under investigation. Okay. Quell, that's the old joke. What's the difference between God and a federal district judge? Answer, God doesn't think he's a federal judge. Yeah. God doesn't have delusions of grandeur, unlike federal judges do. Hey, that's Arnold and Danny DeVito as twins. Remember that movie? Rick D, 2 full babies, baby. Thank you, Rick, for being here. Hopefully that knee's healing up and is back, and you're doing backflips just like you used to. 18 months, that's 2 babies. Rick D, thank you for those. G-Men says, can they hold the hearing somewhere other than D.C.? That way they'll at least get a decent jury, hopefully. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, G-Men, actually. Don't do any of these depositions where they're going to refer you for obstruction to a D.C. jury in D.C. All depositions should be done in the reddest county in Texas, all of them. Then when they obstruct, indict them there. Chubby, hey, come on, Rob. We have cruel and unusual punishment laws that would prevent them from placing Bill and Hillary in the same cell. Yeah. No, and then Hillary would walk out of the cell and she'd be like, he killed himself. No, he killed himself. No, suicide. No, he did. He killed himself. She'd be on CNN. What's going on? 5 in the house. K-Bean, 45 months as a member. K-Bean, we love you so much. Thank you for being here. Modding the fort down for so long. That's 5 babies because 9 times 5 is 45. Wow. Thank you for the assist on that. Donuts. Otherwise, I would have had to get out a spreadsheet and calculate it. Thank you, K-Bean, for being here. 45 months says Trump tried to warn him. Oh, well. Yeah, it's like when the dog catches the car. It's like, oh, what are you going to do with this now? I'm like, what are you going to do? You want it, you got it. Here you go. And all the files are coming out. There's a lot of them, man. It's not looking good for them. The Stacey Plaskett thing and the Hakeem thing are devastating for them. And we'll be able to keep talking about that indefinitely, no doubt. Mock Schnell says, LOL, Rascin and the Dems so wanted the Epstein docs to be released. Now it's all coming out. They're having to say it's not what we wanted, as now they're all coming under the microscope. I did not send that email to Jeffrey. He was just my constituent. You're like, you were texting with the abuser of the victims that you claim to fight for, and you were a former prosecutor. Like, you knew. Bucky's is Rome. The dissent from the judge in Texas redistricting battle is wild. Legal scholars are saying they've never read or seen anything like this. The dissenting judge attacks the activist judge. Man, I haven't seen that one. Interesting. Okay, cool. So thank you for that. We did cover some of the Texas stuff this morning. Bunch of different cases and decisions kind of cobbled into one on that. But yeah, that's what's going on. Bucky's is Rome. Epstein was the fall guy for the CIA. He betrayed the CIA and they got him. I think his death, I think, can be attributed to just cleaning the case out. It's a mop up. I believe a majority of this is manufactured by intelligence agencies with the CIA heading it all up. CIA was trafficking girls for intelligence purposes to get in bed with the heads of states and to blackmail people who work for the government. Yeah, I think as good as explanation as any of them. Hey, that guy from Grumpy Old Men, great film. One Old Guy's Opinions, man. What a nice dono, One Old Guy. Thank you for sending that in. Man, really generous of you. We appreciate that. Says, I don't give two craps about the Epstein files. What is wrong with MAGA? Inability to see threats. There is slow march of taking elected and appointed officials at the local to national levels of government institutions by colonial Islam. Islamists are always Dems. Local elections are lost by MAGA every midterm. Well, we have a real big canary in the coal mine problem that we just saw with Mamdani and the Virginia races and the others. So I think that is true. I think the Epstein thing is just broader than the Epstein files. Like there's, of course, a prurient interest, as they say, prurient interest that feels like it's a little salacious, right? You're kind of digging into the scandalous, trafficking of girls and all of that. That's not why we're interested. Of course, we want justice for the victims and those things, but I think that the Epstein saga is indicative of a much bigger structural problem with our intelligence agencies, with our FBI, with our justice departments, in that we're not getting justice. And they're covering things up, and the elite who are committing the most heinous and worst crimes on the planet are getting away with it, and everybody's looking the other way. There is no justice. So if that is perverted, and the cover-up has gone on for multiple administrations, I think that is a real existential problem for America. We cannot be run by a cabal of pedophiles who cover up for other pedophiles and have our Congress people texting the pedophiles about information, like trying to attack people. Like whatever this organization was, they were trying to stop Trump. Epstein was facilitating that. Plaskett was asking questions of Cohen. So it's not just about Epstein. It's much more structural than that. I mean, it's the same. I think it's probably the same people, more or less, who are responsible for rigging the elections, responsible for, COVID, creating these narratives that we all get psyoped and brainwashed into. So I think it's a much bigger problem. Otherwise, I would agree with you. It's like, for example, it's the same reason why we're kind of talking about Diddy, but then not, right? Because Diddy, it felt like it's less that, like the stakes are less high on the Diddy case, even though I think that was also probably a mop-up. But that was a little bit, I think less existential to the functioning, the processes that exist in America. So, and honestly, you can even attribute some of these recent losses to a diminishment of energy. People felt very deflated after the Epstein saga. People lost a lot of faith, whether you agree or not, with Cash and Dan and Pam after that whole debacle. Influencers got rug pulled. They came out holding these binders like, we're getting some info. Then they all got rug pulled. And that created a reverberation that deflated a lot of MAGA. And then we spent all this time on stopping foreign wars and how much capital was spent on Iran, how much capital is being spent with Ukraine. It's like just never ending. So instead of focusing on Epstein, focusing on January 6th, focusing on Butler, and now Charlie Kirk, it's been, I think the attention has been really dissipated elsewhere, and then your movement gets fractured. And you can't trust the people who spent the last however many years talking on podcast after podcast. Even Dan said, don't let the Epstein thing go. Don't. And then they never go, ugh. So the movement starts to fracture, and it is very disappointing. So I think now that they're back on track. They should have done this from the very beginning and just slowly released tranches of documents that would have been devastating for the Democrats. And they would have said it's weaponized, whatever, but they're going to say that anyway, so who cares? And it's going to be damning for them. I think if they had this cash that they could have used over this last 4 years, they would have done it. And they didn't do it. So now the Republicans have the keys, and hopefully they drive it properly now. But yeah, I understand your point. If they still, don't address things like affordability, homes, jobs, taxes, all of that stuff, then, spinning ourselves out about Epstein all day long every day is not going to get, it's not going to win any votes. But fixing the FBI, fixing the Justice Department, I think that will, because many of us, I think, understand how existential it is. One old guy, thank you for the very generous dono. Very nice of you to send that in. We appreciate your great support. Jonah Finn. Some women signed confidentiality deals. Epstein's estate hasn't released them from them. This was a workaround getting Congress to release the files. All right. So they can't report the crime because of a confidentiality deal. So generally, you can't contract away a crime. In other words, you can't ask somebody via a contract to cover up for you your criminal act. Like that contract would be void. It's called void against public policy. So they may have confidentiality deals, but if there was a crime committed, then that should take precedent and priority over it. Okay. And my other argument would be if they have a confidentiality deal because they signed some settlement, then they're made whole. What are they complaining about? They want a criminal prosecution and a settlement, and the settlement was all they could get, but the criminal prosecution was not. So why'd they agree to settle their claims? Why are they still upset? Isn't it a done matter? And if it's a non-disclosure agreement, that's fine. They don't have to talk, but they can still report the crimes to the government. Say, I'm not allowed to talk about these things for some civil deal that I signed, saying I can't talk about my abuser for whatever reason. But I'm going to talk about it to law enforcement. If you want to hold me in contempt or issue sue me for a breach of contract, then I'll just say you were asking me to not report a crime, and then my contract is void. Would be my argument as a not speaking as a contract lawyer, but there's a million excuses for them, and every other victim of a crime has to communicate with law enforcement about the nature of the crime. And I don't know what's so complicated about that for them. I'm thinking Catherine Rumler's communications, Obama's person, might drag Obama into the Epstein quagmire, island time. Yeah, And we saw that earlier, I think this week or last week. But Catherine Rumler was even emailing with Epstein about the boss, remember? Who was Catherine Rumler's boss? Barack Obama. Thank you, Don. This one from NY. Says Epstein spoke to the delegate as if he was her personal friend. No, he spoke to her like a boss. Why are you chewing? He spoke to her like he was giving commands to an animal. I mean, it was really almost shocking. She's like, not anymore. I'm not chewing. Like he owned her. Rascin on hand blasted Trump for allegedly knowing Epstein. She was the U.S. attorney during the times when he was a pedo. Yeah. So NY, thank you for that. This one, Bucky's is Rome says, wasn't Nancy Mace throwing a fit about the Epstein files not getting released? So why is she going after a Republican and not a Democrat who actually colluded with Epstein while questioning Cohen? Yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on with the Corey Mills case. It looks not good. Again, we don't believe all women, but I've read a couple, stories on it, and it's like, man, those are pretty rough allegations there. So I think maybe Nancy, is also a little bit on a mission. So I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of personal animosity there too. Pete Smith, Timu Obama, aka Brooklyn Obama, from Pete Smith. Thank you for that, Pete. Sketch Therapy. They care about victims of abuse or blackmail. Well, I think they just care about their political power. I don't think they care about really the victims at all. I don't even know that the victims really care about the victims. Everybody says they care about the victims, but there's a lot of other things going on here. Thank you, Sketch. NY. Why doesn't Hakeem have whiplash for his stance on Epstein? Plaskett was besties with a known pedo and she had jurisdiction. Well, because they don't care about their own side. They can do whatever they want. They will never criticize themselves. Only the Republicans do that. So for them, they just stay on message and just keep attacking the Republicans. Yeah. Dan Sundin says, yes, likes on locals do time out. Interesting. Same happens with the ability to edit posts and comments. Dan, thank you for answering that one. Sketch says, I meant it as a joke and as a jab at the politicians. So like the politicians, they care about victims of abuse. Okay. Or blackmail, right? Because Epstein might, like, what does he have on Stacy that he can talk to her that way? Are you chewing? I'd be like, yeah, I'm chewing, punk. Mind your friggin' business. This is a Jolly Rancher and I'm going to have it if I want it. Or whatever. Why are you talking? I'm a sitting congressperson. Don't you talk to me like that. Get out of here. I'll chew if I want to. I chew louder for Jeffrey. Yeah, you listening to this? Here. Dan, yes. So thank you for that, Dan. Sharpie Guy says you covered it. Thank you, Sharpie Guy, for being here. Real Antel. Hey, have fun at the gala. Dressing to the nines? Yeah, I am. I'm wearing a tie today. I know. Crazy. It's a Christmas gala. Or gala. I don't know how to say it. Either way. But yeah, dressing up, going out there. I think it's for a charity, so might be like bidding on a Christmas tree or something. I don't know. Alexis is planning the whole thing, so I'm dressing up. Sharpie Guy, thanks for asking about that, Relantel. Thanks for being here for 21 months. Sharpie Guy. But I remain disgusted, brother. You and me and Ted. Tim Burchett, rather. One old guy says, colonial Islam doesn't care because when they take control of the CIA, when they become the majority in the long run, will Epstein be that big of a deal? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably true. If the Islamists take control of the CIA, I think we probably have some other bigger problems other than just Epstein, but point is well taken, one old guy. Thanks for that. Says, don't be short-sighted and arrogant. Colonial Islam banks on the short-sightedness and arrogance of the West. Islam never coexists with anyone. Well, I just like the American Constitution. I don't want any foreign religions. I don't want any foreign powers. I don't want any foreign political action committees controlling our governance here, period. We have a brotherhood in our Constitution and in America. Dana, what's up? Thank you for upgrading. So nice of you to do that. Thank you, Dana. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for signing up. Mock Schnell, 20 more membos coming in. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for doing this. Look who's here. WX2, Bob Dahl is here. Bob Gable, welcome. Ray Gock, we got Pete Harland, Greg Collins, Kay Gier, Kiana Shaw, Joe Holloway, Southern Ladies here, Bill Jarzemba, Charmaine Lilly, what's up, Say Cheese, Serial Killers here. We've got Just Eat Her Cake, Mock Schnell says. Couple more membos because you're going to work the rest of the week. Good to see you, Mock Schnell. Thanks for squeezing those in before you get back at it. Zach on the Glass, Juarez Playa. What's up, Globalist Juice? We've got David Nelson, Live Free or Die. All gifted membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell in the house. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for doing that. Now, yeah, so I think I just saw a headline, too, that the DOJ has until, like, tonight to respond on the Comey case. And so I'm sure we'll be back to that at some point, maybe tomorrow. We got some comments on locals as we wrap it up here, my friends. We got The Veil says, you know, as the fifth was being relied on in this case, showing some pretty serious similarities with the Department of Education. Bunch of people are on leave, but they're still getting their salary? Why are they getting a salary? If you're on leave, why are you getting a salary? Said, these people should be investigated. What's the excuse this time? The Department of Education has Epstein files on the federal DOJ offices? Question. If not, then when will the charges and changes be forced on the DOE? That's a great question. Yeah, The Veil, I really don't know. I thought I saw somebody speaking about the DOE today on Fox, but I have not been paying attention. Yeah, I mean, if you're divesting it and you're ending it, how long is that going to take? And what's up, Jeremy says, Rob, I'm not sure if you're aware that new information has come to light that triggered a new investigation. This sounds really amazing. What is it? I'm not at liberty to say what the information is or what it refers to. I also can't tell you who is being investigated or what they may have done. But rest assured that something is being done about something possibly important. Wow, this sounds really familiar. It's always puzzling when representatives won't say anything. When they finally are pushed to hold a press conference, they still don't say anything. Well, this sounds shocking. It definitely sounds shocking. And I demand that our government act on this immediately. Act on what? I don't know. This new information. Thank you, JC. Amy Ann, I never laughed so hard. What was that at? Probably not one of my jokes. Probably the GOP meme, probably. That's what I would guess. Amy Ann. Probably a safe bet. Good stuff. All right, so my friends, thank you for sending those in. Let's take a couple X comments, and then we're going to wrap it up on the day. Reminder, no after party today because your boy is heading out the door. But, of course, we'll be back tomorrow for all the things. We had a couple comments. Neuro D, what's up? Fred says, Jody says, hey, Rob, I'd like to tell you how it was a great show, but I have to decline under advisement of my lawyer. LOL, God bless. All right, Jody, I guess we won't hold that against you. You have a good lawyer. Thank you for that, Jody. Lisa Ann, then why aren't they doing that in California? Lisa Ann, are you talking about Texas maybe? Well, in Texas, the map was rejected because of racism, because it's racist against certain groups. But in California, really, white Republicans are being dispossessed. So they can't go and sue and say racism because they'll just say, you're white. Racism can't apply to you. Fred, GOP are simply pathetic. They wouldn't even censure Plaskett. I'm done with this party. All right, well, hang tight, Fred. I know it's pretty irritating. And hey, you like the new thumbnail? Let me know. We're trying something a little bit different. That's my angry face, as you can see. So thanks for following us over on X, my friends. Thanks for all the great donos and the comments and for being here. We will end it here on the evening. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow to get into it again. Before we wrap it up, we want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths. Of course, Donut Mind, me, John in the house. We got Muffin Rando helping out. K-Bean, Carrie B, G-Gum, Elliot, Just Rhonda, Neuro D, Dog Digger, and Janek. And Elliot, G-Gum, and Just Rhonda. I think I got everybody. Our amazing mods. We're so grateful for you. Thank you for modding the fort down for us and keeping things nice and orderly. We had this from One Old Guy. Another generous one. One Old Guy. Thank you for this. Says, the warning, the long game is what needs to be won. MAGA never looks at their own local government election. Islam does. If you truly believe in the U.S. way of life, vote at the grassroots elections or hear the call to prayer in your cities. Man, from One Old Guy. Well, there's a lot of that going on in Dearborn. I know there's protests out there today. One Old Guy this morning. We just covered how in Texas, how the Texas governor, Abbott, has now declared that there is two groups, the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE, that have been designated as foreign terrorist organizations and a transnational criminal organization. So in Texas, those organizations can no longer buy property, and they're subject to all sorts of other scrutiny. So we're seeing some reaction to that. Yeah, we care about America. We care about our culture. We care about our heritage. And we don't want our government to be taken over by imported foreigners, period. So One Old Guy, thank you for that. We appreciate that. Thanks for the real generous donos today. You're amazing. Thanks for supporting our work. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing wherever it is you're watching this if you haven't done that already. And thank you for inviting every single person you've ever met in your life to come back and join us tomorrow when we get into it again, because we are going to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers, truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together we are watching the watchers, shining the light. Watching the watchers, defending what's right. Watching the watchers, still